I don't know. They probably are. I'm sure the listeners are sharp enough to pick up on the difference in recording quality on these last two episodes.
We have a lot of intelligent listeners.
It's true. This one's kind of an on location, as was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jake's in prison, not at liberty to discuss why, really.
Lawyer told me to keep my trap shut.
We know it wasn't from hitting Chad at the Greasy Pickle.
Nothing to do with Chad, and I haven't been implicated by Takeshi 6ix9ine either. Everyone else has, though.
It's very topical.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. He's not afraid to name names to stay out of the joint.
I think he didn't do anything. I think he should be free.
Did you hear even LeBron James called him out? Martha Stewart, that was the one, called him out.
On what, narking?
Yeah.
That's BS.
Dude, Martha Stewart didn't narc on anybody, man. She did her time.
Yeah, she probably did all this stuff herself.
Well, it was insider trading, I assume.
Yeah, like she did all the bad stuff.
But now, she got mad street cred since she teamed up with Snoop Dogg for that cooking show.
That's white-collar crime if I've ever heard it. Martha Stewart barely did time.
She did? I'm going to Google this real quick.
Yeah.
But I think she did, not insignificant time.
I'm pretty sure it was insignificant.
How long was Martha Stewart... How long was Martha in prison? I assume they mean Martha Stewart. Mm-hmm. Dude, 5 months in prison plus 5 months home confinement.
That's 10 months. That's less than a year.
That's almost a year.
Pretty sure 6ix9ine's been in federal penitentiary for over a year.
How about Stitches?
He's free man, isn't he?
Yeah, but didn't he get busted at a Whole Foods for having an automatic weapon?
Probably.
Because
he would do that. That's gangster. Whole Foods is gangster.
Whole Foods is not gangster.
Yeah, pretty gangster.
What? Yeah, I'm going to get my chia seeds. And
going into a Whole Foods with an AK-47 tattooed on your face, probably driving a Maserati, full of cocaine in the trunk, gangster.
I don't know how he gets away with that. How he talks about moving drugs through airports and that kind of thing. And yet, I bet his bags don't get searched.
In one of his songs, he talks about he has a Maserati and the trunk is full of cocaine.
Yeah, it's not...
And he doesn't just get pulled over?
I don't think he's being poetic. Although, what is that song of his that I always quote? Brick in Your Face.
Brick in Your Face, yeah.
It's a euphemism about living life. It has nothing to do with drugs.
Yeah, I hope one day he gets arrested, and that's what he talks about.
Yeah, man.
No, this is all metaphorical.
Right. I put a brick in your face. I've given you an opportunity. Now, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to make the best of this opportunity?
It's about living your best life.
Well, it's a pretty serious thing if you think about it like that. Next time you listen to Brick in Your Face, listen.
My nutrition guy goes to a thing called the Summit of Greatness, which we'll make fun of that name later off air. But it probably has speakers just like Stitches that are talking about seizing your opportunity if life gives it to you. Like Stitches should talk at one.
I think you just got to. Sometimes in life, there's opportunities that you just got to go. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will get it.
Yeah.
You know what? Not everyone will care, but you got to do it, man. You got to do it for you. Because that is that brick in your face.
When life gives you chickens, flip them.
Flip them chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. What was the name of your album? I've already forgot. Something about flip them chickens.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. Well, just know.
Something about the street.
Roll the dice, flip them chickens.
Yeah, roll them dice. Yeah, roll the dice, flip them chickens. Yep.
Man, gonna have that title track out soon.
Mm-hmm. DJ FYSU.
It's gonna be that fire, the truth. But speaking of opportunities, bro, I mean, I feel like everything's relatively comical.
Yep.
It's done here. But you've done some stuff. You've done some things. There was a recent post you made about how you didn't feel like you could talk about some of your accomplishments because people wouldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this is the avenue to do that. Put it out there. To get real.
Yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the comedy aspect of the podcast, but I also hope they're open to a non-comedy episode because, I would like to talk about this. So I made this post the other day where I put up a picture, which just, to the untrained eye, is me talking to another dude, and about half of you is in the side.
The fat half.
Yeah, there's just like half of Pete at the end of the photo.
A love handle and an arm.
So it's a very candid shot of myself and another professional wrestler named CJ Otis. And we were having a conversation a year ago, or a year and a half ago.
Out in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, we're in Fort Wayne at Heroes and Legends Wrestling. So, but little did the photographer, Ed, know, he was taking a photo of like the most pivotal conversation in my life to that point. And that conversation changed my entire life from the time it was taken, I guess about 2 years ago. I show up to this show in Fort Wayne, just a random show. This guy comes up to me and he's like, Jake, how's it going, man? And looks like we're old friends that he hasn't seen in years. And I'm looking at I'm like, man, I don't know who it is. I don't recognize this guy at all. And he's like, it's me, CJ. And it takes me a second, I'm like, oh, CJ, so good to see you, man. Now, the last time I saw CJ was probably like 2012. And at the time, he had long blonde hair. He had glasses, but didn't wear them as often. He was just super jacked. Well, now CJ is bald. Put on some weight, glasses, and he was just dressed like really casually.
He looked not in the industry, but hanging out around some of the guys in the industry. He just looked like a dude.
Yeah.
Like he was working there, hanging out there or something. He didn't necessarily look like he was a member of the audience or anything, but he just looked like a dude.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, dang, CJ, how's it going, man? So years ago, CJ was at like a really high level in the Midwest independent scene in professional wrestling, and super jacked, good looking dude, really killer in the ring. He was a machine. People like looked at him like, oh, damn, like, that's the man. Like, I don't want to be like that. And I was a punk back then, so people didn't look at me like that at all. Like, we weren't friends. Like, we never had conversations. We had one match though, where I know that did help me get over with him and the Michigan crew of guys, because after the match, CJ told everyone, like, oh man, yeah, Jake Oman's really good. Now, I looked awful at the time, though. Like, I was in bad shape. I just didn't look good. I could wrestle well. So, we weren't buddies. But he came up to me and he started talking about this, and I was like, dude, I've been following your career, man. You're doing great. Like, I saw you went to Japan. I'm so happy for you. And he's pretty much like, let's talk about it. And that doesn't sound like much. But up until this point, I hadn't talked about going to Japan with anyone. It'd been a year or a little more since I'd gone. And I didn't even really post when I was in Japan because I didn't want people to think I was bragging. Also, the first time I got to go for a month, it was just a tryout. Like, it was an opportunity where, like, hey, if you get yourself here, we'll put you through the ringer for a month, and we'll see if we like you and if we want to give you another opportunity later. So it wasn't like I was going to wrestle. It wasn't like I was being paid. So I didn't want to post a lot about it because I didn't want people to think I was bragging, because I took an opportunity that was presented to me at my expense. But it changed my life. The training we did every day changed the entire way I look at things. We were pretty much tortured and treated terribly and beaten to hell and back, but I was ready for it. And that's all I ever wanted, was to wrestle in Japan. So I got the opportunity, and they ended up giving me up 2 matches where I was there at the end of my trip. They weren't big ones. They were on the pre-show. Didn't get paid for them, but I got to do it. I got to wrestle in Japan, but I didn't talk about it when I got back because I didn't want people to think I have an ego. But a few guys that I wasn't friends with, just random dudes at shows, would come up to me and they'd ask me about it. So I would tell them because I'd be so happy to be like, yeah, I want to talk about this. But unfortunately, none of my best friends asked me anything about it. And none of them seemed like happy or like any supportive. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just not going to talk to these guys about it. The only dudes I could maybe talk to, even though they wouldn't be able to relate so much because they haven't been there themselves and they didn't know how it is. Like, the world is just that much differently over there. It changes you. A few months later, I got to go back for a really big show and a really big wrestling tour, and it was great. And, they paid me and all that awesome stuff. And that month was one of the best months of my life until that point.
Did you go to the beach?
I did go to the beach. I made good friends with Hino. We went to the beach.
Shared in your love of the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah, so that's where this Red Hot Chili Peppers thing started. Hino ate a lot of food, hung out a lot. It was awesome. That August of 2016 was super pivotal and still changing my life. Like, it was great. So I came back, and this time I felt like I could actually talk about it less, because a few months before I'd actually heard somebody say that 4 of my good friends had a conversation together where they said that I was getting a big head. And now 4 dudes I'd never even talked to had that conversation. They had maybe barely overheard me talk to a few other people about going, and at no point did I brag or make it sound like I think I'm better than anyone or that I am king anything. So that really hurt. So I just couldn't talk to anyone about it. So I kept living life and I was like, whatever. But I sat on it, and I still can't talk to too many people about this type of thing. Now, I went in 2016 to a company called Wrestle One, and CJ in 2012 got the opportunity to go to Japan for 3 months for All Japan Pro Wrestling, which was a huge company over there that eventually split into 2 companies, Wrestle One being one of them, where most of the people from All Japan went to Wrestle One. So I essentially did this. I went over to do the same thing as CJ did, just years later. So we start talking about all the guys we know because he trained like I trained and he lived like I lived. So we start talking about all this stuff and I'm just so happy because I can finally let it out. Be like, yeah, man, this and this. And he'd be like, and he would be like, oh yeah, how is such and such? Like, I used to love this guy. And then I'm like, oh yeah, man, that dude was awesome. And at that point in my head, I'm like, oh, CJ had to sit on this stuff for like 6 years. He didn't get to talk to anyone about any of this. So like, as we're talking about this, I'm just so happy to be letting everything out because CJ understands where no one else understands. And then we eventually even transitioned into the topic of coming back home. He couldn't really talk about it. Otherwise people would think he's a prick. And I was like, yeah, me too, man. So we got to let a lot of stuff out that day. It was a super important conversation that we got to have. Then he threw on me the most pivotal piece of advice I've ever gotten in my entire life. And if you know me, you've probably heard the story. I know you've heard the story. You were there.
I was there.
You were there.
I'm pictured. Half of me was there.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard us having the conversation live, but I know you would have heard about it on the way home because it was a big thing. It was the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. So now this is going to be me kind of telling CJ's story, kind of telling another guy's story. So it gets convoluted. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously, because this is a third-hand account of the story that changed my life, which is the story I'm talking about. So I can speak to that with a lot of accuracy.
Accept it as fact, take it verbatim, and make sure you report on it.
Yeah, so if you feel free to run into these people, tell them you know exactly what they said. CJ said he had a conversation a few weeks before with a guy named Dan Severn, who was his trainer. Now, do you know who Dan Severn is?
I do know who Dan Severn is.
Sweet. A lot of people in 2019 don't know who Dan Severn is.
He was like Ken Shamrock, right?
Yep, he was. So Dan Severn was UFC champion back in like UFC 1 and UFC 2, like before UFC was a thing. Before it was popular and famous, Dan Severn was a murder machine. And Dan is like a big, stocky, 6'2", 6'3", 250-pound Greco-Roman wrestler. You know, I'm sure at some point he tried to qualify for Olympics or qualified for the Olympic team or something. So Dan is a beast. He actually is Dan the Beast Severn.
Oh.
So he was CJ's trainer. So CJ said that he had a conversation with Dan. And Dan had recently went to a funeral of a friend of his and it had him contemplating his life. And Dan's in his 60s now. And he told CJ that he'd been everywhere and he'd done everything. And he'd met all these famous people and did a bunch of awesome things like UFC for years. And he was in WWE for a while. And pretty much Dan lived the life, like any life someone would want to live, like multiple time world champion in all these sports and everything. But the thing he said he regretted the most was now he's had a lot of friends die and he's probably getting close to death himself. And he doesn't have any pictures of any of it. Because when he first got into these businesses, he was told, don't take a picture with anyone because it makes it seem like you're not a peer, you're not on their level. It makes you seem like a fan if you take a picture with somebody. And that's the thing that gets taught to professional wrestlers at the very beginning of their career. Day one, people will say, don't go into the locker room and take pictures with people because it makes you seem like a mark, which is a term for a fan, but usually used in a derogatory way. Like, oh, like if I were to show up to a show and Stone Cold was in the back and I go up to ask Stone Cold for a picture, it makes me seem like a mark. Like, I'm not on his level. I'm a fan looking up to him. So professional wrestlers are pretty much beaten into the thought process of you don't ask for the picture, you don't take the picture. So you just get into the habit of not even doing that with friends. So Dan said he did all this stuff in his life and he's coming to the end of his life and he's forgotten so many things, so many stories, so many people, and he knows he'll never get a chance to relive those things again. In the end of his life, he wishes he had pictures of him and Muhammad Ali. And he wishes he had pictures of him and, you know, insert any famous person.
Chris Jericho.
Him and Chris Jericho. Exactly. And he pretty much said, you know, like when he's gone, those memories are gone. Everything's gone. And no one's going to remember. So he told CJ, he's like, so CJ, screw what everyone says. Take the picture. And then CJ was like, yeah, man, you know, I wish I had been told that. Because, you know, all this conversation we've had with all these people in Japan, pretty much he said that 3 months was the most important 3 months of his life, changed his entire career, life, perspective on everything. Some of these people were his best friends. He kept in contact with some of them, and he doesn't have a single picture of any of it. He's the only one that knows. He's the only one that knows what he did and who he knew, And he's probably already forgotten a lot of stories about all of these people. And eventually he's going to be gone. And no one will know. And it makes him really sad that he won't be able to look back in his 50s at this time of his life and have a single picture. So he looked at me and he was like, do you have any pictures of you and any of these guys from Japan? Because you can tell it's super important to you and you made some great friends. I told him, no, I don't have any pictures because I don't want to be a mark. And he's like, are you going back? I'm like, yeah, I'm going back in 2 months. And he just looked at me like dead in the eyes and was like, take the picture, man. You might never see some of these guys again. You know, even if they just left the company, you might not cross their path again. He's like, something could happen to you before you go. And it's just gone. You know, you don't have anything to remind you of that experience and those people and your friends. You're like, how many friends do you have you don't even have pictures with now that you see often? And that changed the way I look at everything.
When he said that from a guy who took a pretty significant injury, and can he not wrestle anymore, or is he going to give it a shot again?
So yeah, CJ, he actually has started training again. I think he might have had 1 or 2 matches, which is really great because I want to wrestle CJ again, and I have no doubt he'd still be a hell of a performer. And yeah, and that's coming from a guy who, he looked at me and he said, man, he's like, those best 3 months of my life and I'll never go back. I will never see those people again. He's like, it's just not going to happen. He's like, I didn't know at the time I wouldn't go back, but I didn't. And I never got a chance to take pictures with these people. And that just made me think, I don't have any pictures with Hino. And that's a dude who I consider a good friend. And I don't have any pictures with Kaz Hayashi, who's like my mentor over there. So it just changed everything for me. So I went back a few months later. And while I was there, I made sure to take pictures. I took pictures, me and the guys, if we were out, you know, after show, like drinking and eating. Hino and I went to the beach and I took pictures, and, you know, Hino and some friends took me to the biggest Buddha statue in the world. And I got a bunch of pictures from that. And that's just like, having a good time, you know, even just like training days when we're at the gym. It's like, yeah, I took the pictures, and I posted some of them up also because, you know, people made it pretty apparent, like, hey, we want to see some of the stuff you're doing, because not a lot of people get a chance to do the cool things I've done. So I do need to post some. And yeah, now even in day-to-day life, I try and take more pictures of like those pivotal moments, because I might not ever actually go back to Japan again anyway.
Well, how do you deal with, because you'd mentioned a little earlier that some of the guys maybe aren't necessarily supportive, or they think you're boasting about it. You have a camaraderie with all these guys because whether it's training, wrestling, life on the road, whatever, friendships are built and you know each other real well. So I'm sure that you're all very supportive of one another, but at the end of the day, there's only a finite amount of roster spots on WWE, AEW, smaller indie shows, TNA, whatever it is. So how do you balance that to where, hey, I want you to do real well, except I want that spot on that roster over you, and for whatever reason, my skill set, my look, my gimmick, whatever is better than yours. So how do you balance that competition and support for these guys that you've just spent that kind of time with and formed that kind of relationship?
I can't say for sure because I've never looked at it that way. You know, I've always thought, man, I'm really happy if all my friends get to do all this cool stuff. And then there might be a little part of me afterward that's like, man, I really want to do that. But I've never looked at my friends as competition. You know, I've always looked at it as like, man, yeah, you go over there and you make yourself a huge star. Then maybe at some point you'll even say, hey, dude, come with me. Which if I ever got to that point in Japan, like I would do that too. And the last time I was in Japan for most of the end of 2017, I had 2 friends that I kept going to the office about and saying, hey, I need these, like, if you want foreigners, you want these guys. Because they told me, you know, hey, maybe more foreigners. I was like, oh yeah, I have good friends. I have big friends. So, you know, I tried really hard to get 2 of my buddies over there. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, very good. And then I would be like later, oh, hey, what do you think? And maybe next trip, you know, me and Russ and me and Jake. And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe. Which usually is their no. But sometimes it means maybe. So
when you say maybe, you mean...
Yeah, when you say maybe, you probably mean no. But maybe you mean maybe. And maybe that's cool. So I was like, yeah. So, you know, and that's the thing is like, those dudes could be jealous of me being over there, but I could get them over there if I'm successful, you know? So I've never looked at it that way. And actually in those 3 of those 4 friends, actually, They came up to me later and apologized for that because I even brought up, I was like, hey man, I heard this a while back and it hurt me. Like it really sucked. And they were like, oh yeah, sorry about that, man. We were jealous. I was like, oh, well, thanks for admitting it. But, it did a number on me for a year. And yeah, and like, not just be honest here, like, I don't know if I'll get to go back to Japan. Like, I was supposed to be in Japan now. Like, I was supposed to be in Japan in August and September, and it fell through because of weird politics. So I might never go back and see Hino again. Like, I'm realistically, I'm going to try to make that happen.
Well, and then Hino's beach party, your wrestling event.
Exactly. Like, I might fly some dudes over here, or I might see some dudes over here, but I haven't seen Hiroki in Japan since he's been over here twice. So, like, just for example, I might not see some of these dudes again, but I have the pictures and I have the memories. So, like, I'm not going to forget that even if I get CTE.
Until your next concussion, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the next time I have a bad post-concussions, like, syndrome, like, I'll be like, maybe I'll look back at the picture and be like, oh, yeah, Hiroki and I went to that bar. That's cool. I remember him.
Vaguely.
Yeah. Yeah, so now that's what I do when I'm out and I'm living some life and doing cool things, is I try and take that picture and I forget everything. Like I forget so much stuff. Luckily, when I started traveling years ago, I told myself, I think I might forget this stuff one day. So I've journaled. So every time I've been somewhere internationally, I've always had a notebook with me and written down exactly what I've done that day.
Is that also the time you were wearing women's clothing in France? Is that when you decided to journal too?
That's in my journal. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in France and I spent a week in women's sweatpants and yeah, some long sleeve shirt from some guy. I don't know. Yeah. I wrote about that. Commando too.
If you want to hear Jay talk about himself in a flattering manner, ask about how his genitals look in women's sweatpants. Dude,
have you seen the picture of me on the cliff overlooking the beach? Yeah, you have. Everyone's seen it. It's the @OffTheCliffPod Instagram picture, profile picture. Me just in a cliff overlooking a beach in France. No big deal.
With an accentuated package?
It's huge, bro. It looks so big. I don't know. Does it look big in that picture? Because in day-to-day life, it looked big.
I'm just so used to having a monstrous package that I don't know.
But it totally looked like European fashionable men's joggers. That's why I started wearing joggers when I got home. That's why I'm wearing joggers today.
Is that your Val Venus photo?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. It looks stuffed. It didn't. You know why? Because I couldn't afford stuffing it with anything because I didn't have any clean laundry. How I ended up in women's sweatpants anyway.
Full circle. Well, I guess technically not. To break the fourth wall, the Greasy Pickle episode was also recorded today. So when I said full circle, I'm referring to a past event.
Boom. Greasy Pickle.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode, check that one out.
Yeah, almost some of this, the picture story. So now I take pictures everywhere. But I also try and tell more people this story. I was in Germany this time last year, and I had a blast. It was great. Did this fun show, Alex Wright's New European Championship Wrestling. Go watch some old Alex Wright on the WWE Network. It's fantastic. Cool dude. I trained the day before with his crew of people. And then we had the show that day and hung out with them all day. And their call time is like 10 a.m. So you spend legit all day with these people. And everyone was super cool. And there were two people in particular, Eric and Steffi, that I talked to the most. Really awesome two humans. So we went out to eat afterward because the city we were in was called Hessdorf. And it's a really small city, 20 minutes from Nuremberg. The only thing open at night, maybe the only food place to eat, is McDonald's.
McDonald's with poutine?
No poutine. Yeah, it's a shame. So we walk over to McDonald's after the show. Eventually, my ride is getting ready to leave. So I am having this conversation with Eric and Steffi, and I'm like, hey, before we leave, I want to get a picture with you guys. And they looked at me kind of like, oh, really? Surprised. I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm going to tell you a quick 3-minute version of this story. And I told them the fastest version of this story ever. So Eric that night had his 6th match, and I was in the match. And then Steffi hadn't had a match yet. Her first match was a week or two later. I told him, I was like, hey, yeah, I want to get a picture with you guys because, and I told them all that story. And I was like, I had an awesome time in Germany. Realistically, I'll probably never be back to Nuremberg, which I will be there in a month now. So that's cool. I will go back. But realistically, Nuremberg's an off the beaten path place. I don't know if I'll ever see you guys again, but you guys, I want to let you know you impacted my life. So I want a picture with you so I can remember it later. I don't want to forget this. And they just looked at me oh, damn, that was a lot you just threw at us. And I was like, yeah, so professional wrestling is the greatest job in the world. Go all these places, take all these pictures, make all these friends, and hopefully you'll see everyone all over the world. But in case you don't see them again, take the picture. I was like, that's so important. Take the picture. I didn't start doing it until I was 11 or 12 years in the business. You guys are starting out. You haven't even been in the business 11 days. So take them. And I think they appreciated that. And I've stayed in contact with them both now. And I'm actually going to go ahead and bunk up with them for like a week.
3-way?
No, that's weird. But now I'm going to stay I'll be in Nuremberg next month for a week, hanging out with these awesome people because of a genuine connection I made at some point. But anytime I go anywhere now, it's, I tell people like, hey, take the picture. It's really important, even if I don't tell them the whole story.
Well, today's day and age, I wonder if it's become a little bit easier because you can't say, oh, hey, let me snap this for the gram or whatever it is, which for a lot of people, Instagram is a flex. I mean, we've talked about Instagram solely just being a flex in general, but I do think there's some benefit. It's maybe not your genuine life. It's not your day-to-day, but how many people have a photo album of, oh yeah, this was Tuesday, me going to work. Like, people don't do that. All your photo albums are highlights. Yeah, it is what it is, man. They're life experiences that you're looking to archive. Why not do it?
I think if you ask someone for a photograph with them genuinely, even if they are, say, a big name star, as long as you don't come off like a goofy fanboy, you're probably fine. Like I wrestled Cody Rhodes like a year and a half ago, and he was getting ready to leave, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. And I was like, hey, dude, I'm sorry to ask you this. I don't want to come off like Mark or anything. But I recently I recently had a conversation with somebody talking about, hey, if something was really awesome, take the picture of it. And if I could get a picture with you, that'd be great. And he was like, right away, he's like, absolutely, man, for sure. Like, he dropped his bag real quick. He's like, yep. And we snapped a picture and he walked away. And I don't think he walked away saying, man, I worked this stupid Mark tonight.
Maybe that's just the thing then. I mean, you're in the industry, at least the indie scene in Indy or in wherever else too. Why not? Hey, man, take the picture.
Yeah. And when I travel next month, I'm going to be taking all the pictures. And now it's like, it's even easier if I tell people like the short version of this story. It's like, hey man, we only have one life and I don't want to forget this. I don't want to forget this. I might never see you again. Let's go ahead and take a picture.
You bringing back YOLO?
YOLO. It's true. I'm going to say it in a different way. But
oh, come on.
We do only live once.
Just take the picture.
Jake Oman only lives once. Julo.
Or I was talking to another group of men who have a counterpoint. I said, hey, I'm not going to die. I'm going to live forever. Past experience up till now, I'm still here. I'm not going to die. So come on, man. Take the picture anyway. Because if you're immortal, it's going to seem like a real long time ago.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I mean, you don't know you're going to die.
I don't. So far, I haven't.
Bam.
I'm scared of that happening.
Dying or not dying?
It's dying. Not dying would be sweet.
Man,
as long as I get stuck at an age where I can still do stuff.
You think at 300 years old, if you're like hunched over and a hover around, like...
if I could stop aging like a vampire at like 36 years old, that'd probably be great.
It's true. Then you just have, well, like the Undertaker. He's probably not going to die, is he?
I mean, he's looking half dead.
Yeah, isn't he though?
Now, if you give me a heads up as to when I'm going to die or when I'm going to get vampire-ish ability to live forever, let me know because I'll juice up to the gills so I look great by 36. Let me know my timeline here. I'll start doing CrossFit until just 36.
Oh, CrossFit will kill you.
Kidding.
If anything will kill you, it's CrossFit.
That's true. I don't want to have a bum shoulder the next 300 years. But yeah, give me a heads up so I can look really good when I get vampirized.
Hashtag vampirized.
Vampirized. All right, I think that's my story, Pete. Take the picture. Everyone out there, take the picture. Take the goddamn picture.
Ooh, that one's impactful. You want to leave that one unbleeped? Or are you bleeping that one?
Nope, unbleep that. I'm not going to promote anything else. I'm not going to hype anything. Take the goddamn picture.